Suburban Sentinel here, along with Bella the camera cat. And I wanted to do another video concerning dealing with anti-gun people. Specifically, I wanted to address the issue when someone comes up and asks, why do you need those high-capacity clips? And I know they meant magazines, but they usually call them clips. So today I just want to share how I handle this particular type of encounter. Now, I tend to get this question a lot. First and foremost, because I'm a conservative guy and known Second Amendment and gun supporter, living in an area that is, for all intents and purposes, extremely liberal. Second, I'm only a few miles from Newtown, Connecticut, the epicenter for the cause of the current pro-gun ban, gun control efforts. But prior to addressing the particular issue concerning magazines, I'd like to address some general considerations. Now, when someone engages me in this, let's call it a debate, they generally already have their minds made up. They're anti-gun, and for whatever reason, they want to engage in this confrontation. I understand that the chances of me changing their mind is quite small, but I go forward anyway. First and foremost, you never know who's listening. Oftentimes, some of the anti-gun people want to engage you in confrontation just so they can show off to their friends how politically correct they are, etc., etc. But you never know. That person or people who are standing with them might be on the fence concerning guns. Even if it's just one person who engages me, not showing off for their friends, I'll do it anyway just because it's good practice for the next time when there are other people around. And third, I just like pissing them off. The first recommendation I have for these confrontations is that you're not there to win. Again, you probably will not change hearts and minds, but if someone is on the fence, you want to educate them. You can't make someone want to learn. So if you think of yourself more as a teacher, you won't be personally offended if they refuse to listen to what you have to say. So again, you're not there to win. Second recommendation is to the best of your ability, know your audience. Know the background of the person or people you're dealing with. That may make it easier to get your point across. And I'll come back to that in a little while. Another recommendation is no screaming or yelling. It doesn't serve any purpose. If you go all Alex Jones, you're just going to look like a lunatic. And that really is, in most cases, counterproductive. Also, refrain from swearing. I can certainly express myself without expletives, and nothing makes me shut down faster from listening to someone else when every other word is F this and F that. It's unbecoming, and at best, it doesn't help the situation. In addition, really listen to what the other person or people have to say. Sometimes they'll have good points that warrant you thinking about it for the next argument. And also, I've heard many people who have extreme misconceptions about firearms, and you can use their ignorance to educate them. For example, I was listening to a radio show with a gentleman whom I do not know, but I'm familiar with his work, and I respect him a great deal. And in his show, he said unequivocally that the shooter in the Newtown Elementary School tragedy was using a rifle that you pull the trigger and it shoots 100 bullets in less than 5 seconds. Now, all of us know that that is just flat out not true. That's a fairy tale. But this is a gentleman with millions of listeners many of whom hang on every word he says and take it as gospel. If you're not listening to the other side, you may miss those blatant misconceptions. So the bottom line is to really be respectful, even if the other side stoops to a lower level. You want to take the high road here. So several times this month, actually, one of these folks has come up to me and said, "Why do you need those high capacity clips?" First thing is, don't correct them on the clips thing. We all know that they really meant magazines, but correcting them just muddies the water and really serves no purpose. We know what they're talking about. Now I'm going to break down the argument into essentially 3 sections. The first of which I call the fallacy of the high capacity magazine. So again, the question posed is, why do you need those high capacity clips? And they'll often follow that up with, it's too dangerous. They can just shoot more people that way. Well, the first thing you want to do is acknowledge their point of view and say that you understand. And not acknowledge by saying, oh, you're such an ignorant jerk, or you're a jackass, or you're a fool. You don't want to do anything like that, because that's going to shut down their ears right away. I know certainly what happened to me. But you can acknowledge and understand that position without agreeing to it. I usually begin my response with something similar to the following. Quote, "At first glance, it may be perfectly reasonable to assume that in an active shooter situation, the more rounds in a magazine, the more people will be shot. However, history has shown us this is simply not the case." So what we've done there is acknowledge the other person's position, also acknowledge that their position is not crazy or stupid, and we've also set ourselves up to explain why this particular assumption is incorrect. Now that's going to be a whole lot more effective than just coming right out of the box saying, "You're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about." So the first piece of evidence I want to put in support of my counter argument is that we've been down this road before. We did have magazine limitations in the past, and don't be surprised if people don't know about the 1994 to 2004 assault weapons ban and the related legislation. So make sure you tell your quote-unquote opponent that we did have magazine limitations in the past, and most importantly, there is no data or evidence to support that limiting magazine capacity had any impact on crime or in any way reduced gun deaths. Then I want to go into magazine changes. Don't assume that people know how and when magazines get changed. You want to tell them that magazine changes are very quick. So even if you had for example, a 10-round magazine rather than a 30-round magazine, the shooter can just carry more magazines. Now, I don't know exactly about times. I don't have any scientific basis for this. But from my observation, people who are very good at mag changes can change a magazine in 2 seconds or less. And if you're average, you can change it in 3 seconds or less. Now, the point I want to make to my opponent is that most of these active shooter situations are unopposed. In other words, the gunman is not being resisted by anyone who is armed. So 3 seconds will not be enough time for an unarmed victim to try to neutralize an assailant, especially when a lot of these mass shooters have more than one firearm with them. Then here's the last point I tend to make with my opponent concerning the fallacy of the high capacity magazine. And what I tell them, and this is true, that if I thought having lower capacity magazines would either have saved one of those kids in Newtown or would save someone else's kid down the road, I would turn mine over to you this very minute. And then you reiterate that we went through the low capacity magazine edict years ago and it had essentially no impact on crime or gun deaths. Now, occasionally you'll get someone who says, well, the 1994 magazine limitations edicts didn't go far enough. We should cut it down to 6 rounds or 5 rounds or 2 rounds. And then at that point, just go back to mag changes, 2 to 3 seconds. What is someone in a free fire zone going to do in 2 to 3 seconds when only the criminal gets to free fire? Okay, let's move on to part 2. Why do you, quote unquote, need these high capacity magazines? And almost without fail, the opponent will move on to that. Why do you specifically need these, they call them assault magazines or something like that. Again, don't correct them, you know what they're talking about. Well, the first thing I say in response to that is that our country and our economy are built around wants more so than needs. Now here's the point where it can really come in handy to know your audience, know what they do, where they come from, what their basic story is. And what I say to them is, look, in this country, liquor is legal. Those of us who are of legal age can drink alcohol. Nobody needs alcohol to survive. In addition, you can go to a dealership today and buy an automobile that will go 150 miles an hour. There is nowhere on public roadways where it's legal to drive 150 miles an hour, yet we sell cars that can do just that all the time. And then you go on to say, if these things, being alcohol or really fast cars, are misused, they can be deadly to us and to many people around us. But in this country, we have the fundamental freedoms to use these type of items responsibly. Then almost without fail, your opponent will bring up that, yes, if you abuse alcohol or motor vehicles, they're very dangerous, and that's why liquor and cars are highly regulated. And then you can at that point agree with them. Yes, guns are highly regulated as well. Now that doesn't mean that we will never have gun deaths. Just look at how many people die or have their lives ruined by alcohol and motor vehicles every year. Generally, the next phase of the argument moves into a question of the opponent saying something to the effect of, what do you use those high capacity magazines for? In other words, why do you want them? Usually this is a trap. They want to portray you as someone in the tinfoil hat crowd, some paranoid person who's afraid that the zombies or the boogeyman or the G-men are coming to get you, and you want to be able to fight them off with as many rounds as you can. Don't fall into that trap. So here's what I say to them, and this is the absolute truth. If I decide to go to the rifle range and shoot 120 rounds through my AR-15, I can bring 4 of these 30-round magazines or 12 10-round magazines. First, there's very little difference in cost between a 10-round magazine and a 30-round magazine. most of the cost is either in machine time or human labor rather than materials. So it's much cheaper for me to have 4 magazines. In addition, these magazines require periodic maintenance. They need to be cleaned and rebuilt. It takes the same amount of time to clean and or rebuild a 30-round magazine as it does a 10-round magazine. So essentially, I use these standard capacity magazines because it's more convenient and less expensive. And here's where you want to reiterate, and most importantly, these don't hurt anybody. Our society does not suffer because of these magazines. And here's again, you reiterate, if I thought that one of these kids in Newtown or anywhere else could have been saved or will be saved in the future by a 10-round capacity magazine, I'd give these up right now. Now, that's where I tend to end the argument, at least my side of it. I know there is a glaring omission, and that is the average citizen should be, at least have the freedom to be armed with the same level of parity as the average foot soldier. Most people, at least most people around here, believe that thinking there could ever be some type of tyrannical government takeover is just crazy talk. And I disagree with that premise, but I don't think it really helps the argument, especially with respect to magazine capacities. So I just leave that out. I kind of like to cap the argument off by saying something to the effect of, you know, the politicians are always looking for an easy fix to complex problems. And unfortunately, just banning a certain type of implement will not fix societal, moral, or mental health issues in this country. And trying to do it the way the politicians are acting simply will not work. So that's essentially the end of the argument. Don't be surprised if your opponents, who are often supposed to be the liberal do-gooders, get all apoplectic and excited. I had one lady start smacking me around. And the best thing to do, in my opinion, is not react at all. Just walk away. Again, be the bigger person. Be respectful. The ranters like the Alex Joneses of the world are not doing us any favors. They make us look like lunatics. So now I'm going to go put all my high-capacity magazines back in the safe before they escape and go kill somebody on their own. So thanks for watching. Please subscribe. This is the Suburban Sentinel, along with Bella the Camera Cat. Safe shooting, everybody.